The biggest scam in human history is not cryptocurrency or pyramid schemes. It's the lie that staying in toxic situations makes you strong when it actually makes you stupid. Right now, while you're reading this, someone with half your talent is living the life you dream about because they had the courage to walk away from what was killing their potential. They didn't have more opportunities than you, they just created more opportunities by refusing to waste their energy on people and situations that didn't serve their highest good. The reason unsuccessful people stay stuck is because they've been programmed to believe that leaving equals failure when leaving actually equals freedom. Every day you delay walking away from what's wrong is another day you delay walking into what's right. The most successful people are not the ones who never gave up. They are the ones who gave up on the right things fast enough to grab hold of the right things. Your loyalty to the wrong people is disloyalty to your own future. And that's a betrayal you can't afford to keep committing. The strongest thing you will ever do in your life is walk away from someone or something that doesn't value what you bring to the table. But here's what most people don't understand. They think walking away makes you weak. They think it means you're giving up, that you're a quitter, that you don't have what it takes to fight. Let me tell you something today that will change how you see your own power forever. There was once a magnificent eagle, born to soar above the clouds, whose wings were designed to carry him to heights that would make mountains look small. But this eagle found himself in a barnyard, surrounded by chickens who spent their days scratching in the dirt for scraps of corn and leftover grain. Day after day, this eagle watched these chickens fight over crumbs, pecking at each other for the smallest morsel, completely content with their heads down, eyes fixed on the ground. Now, the chickens weren't bad birds. They were just living according to their nature, their design, their purpose. But here's where the story gets interesting. This eagle, this creature built for greatness, began to believe that this scratching and fighting for scraps was normal. He started to think that maybe this was all there was to life. Maybe competing for leftover corn was what he was supposed to do. Maybe keeping his head down and accepting whatever fell from the farmer's hand was the way things were supposed to be. But something inside that eagle knew better. Something deep within his spirit recognized that he was created for more than ground level living. He felt it every time the wind blew. He felt it every time he looked up and saw the vast expanse of sky calling his name. He felt it in his bones, in his DNA, in every fiber of his being. He was not a chicken. Then one day, that eagle made a decision that changed everything. He decided to respect himself enough to walk away from the barnyard. Not because he hated the chickens, not because he was angry or bitter, but because he finally understood that staying there any longer would be an insult to who he was created to be. And you know what happened when that eagle spread his wings and took flight? The chickens called him crazy. They said he was arrogant, that he thought he was too good for them. They said he would never survive out there in the real world, that he was making a mistake, that he should come back down where it was safe. But that eagle had discovered something powerful. The moment you respect yourself enough to walk away from situations that diminish you, you discover strength you never knew you had. The moment you refuse to settle for scraps when you were designed for abundance, your whole world changes. Now, I'm not talking about running away from every challenge. I'm not talking about quitting every time things get difficult. There's a difference between walking away from something that's beneath your purpose and giving up when things require effort. The eagle didn't leave because flying was hard work. He left because scratching for corn was never his assignment, you see. Most people have been conditioned to believe that enduring disrespect is somehow noble, that tolerating mistreatment makes you strong, that accepting less than your worth shows character. But I want to challenge that thinking today. True strength is not found in your ability to take abuse. True strength is found in your wisdom to recognize when something is not serving your highest good every single day. People stay in relationships that drain them. jobs that diminish them, friendships that exploit them, and situations that steal their joy simply because they've been taught that walking away is weakness. They've been programmed to believe that staying, no matter what the cost to their spirit, their peace, their potential, is the right thing to do. But what if I told you that the people who truly succeed in life, who truly find fulfillment, who truly make a difference, are the ones who have mastered the art of walking away? What if I told you that your ability to remove yourself from situations that don't honor your value is actually your superpower? Think about it this way. When you stay somewhere you're not valued, you're not just hurting yourself, you're actually preventing someone else from stepping into that space who might truly appreciate what you bring. You're blocking your own blessing by holding on to something that was never meant for you in the first place. The eagle in our story didn't just save himself when he flew away. He opened up space in that barnyard for a chicken who would be perfectly content scratching for corn. He made room for someone whose purpose aligned with that environment. And more importantly, he positioned himself to fulfill his true destiny in the sky. This is what happens when you respect yourself enough to walk away. You don't just escape what's wrong, you create space for what's right. You don't just end what's not working, you make room for what will work. You don't just leave behind what diminishes you, you step toward what will elevate you. But here's the key. Walking away with respect for yourself is not the same as walking away in anger, bitterness, or revenge. The eagle didn't burn down the barnyard before he left. He didn't attack the chickens or try to prove them wrong. He simply recognized his worth, honored his design, and moved accordingly. When you walk away from the right things, for the right reasons, with the right heart, you position yourself for breakthrough. You align yourself with your purpose. You open yourself up to opportunities that were waiting for you to make space in your life. But before you can walk away from what doesn't serve you, you must first understand what you're worth. And this is where most people get stuck. They don't walk away because they don't truly know their value. They accept treatment that diminishes them because they've never taken the time to recognize what they bring to any situation. Let me tell you about an experiment that happens in schools around the world. A teacher takes a crisp new $100 bill and holds it up in front of the class. She asks, "Who wants this $100 bill?" Every hand in the room shoots up immediately. Then she takes that same bill and crumples it up into a tight ball. She asks again, "Who still wants this?" The hands remain up, perhaps with a little less enthusiasm, but they stay up. Then she drops that crumpled bill on the floor and steps on it. She grinds it into the dirt with her shoe, picks it up, and shows the class this dirty, wrinkled, damaged-looking piece of paper. And she asks one more time, "Who still wants this $100 bill?" And you know what happens? Every single hand stays up. Why? Because despite what that bill had been through, despite how it looked, despite the damage that had been done to it, its value had not changed. It was still worth $100. The crumpling didn't change its worth. The dirt didn't diminish its value. The wrinkles didn't reduce its purchasing power. You are that $100 bill. No matter what you've been through, no matter how people have treated you, no matter how many times you've been crumpled up, stepped on, or dragged through the dirt, your value has not changed. Your worth is not determined by how others have handled you. Your value is not reduced by the mistakes you've made or the seasons you've endured. But here's what happens in real life that doesn't happen in the classroom experiment. People start to believe that because they've been treated like they're worthless. They actually are worthless. They begin to accept the crumpled, stepped-on version of themselves as their true value. They start to think that maybe they deserve the dirt. Maybe they deserve to be wrinkled. Maybe this damaged version is all they're worth. And this is the trap that keeps people stuck in situations that don't serve them. When you don't recognize your own value, you'll accept treatment that reflects a lesser version of who you are. When you don't understand your worth, you'll stay in places where that worth is not acknowledged, appreciated, or honored. There's a principle that governs all human relationships. And it's this: people will treat you exactly the way you teach them to treat you. Not the way you hope they'll treat you, not the way you think they should treat you, but the way you demonstrate through your actions that you believe you should be treated if you accept disrespect. You're teaching people that disrespecting you is acceptable. If you tolerate being taken for granted, you're instructing others that your contributions don't require acknowledgement. If you stay in situations where you're undervalued, you're communicating that undervaluing you is appropriate, but the reverse is also true. When you carry yourself with dignity, others learn to treat you with dignity. When you demonstrate self-respect, others learn to respect you. When you show that you value yourself, others begin to value you too. There was a young woman named Elena who worked at a company for 7 years. She was brilliant, hardworking, and consistently delivered excellent results. But year after year, she watched as her colleagues got promotions while she remained in the same position. She watched as her ideas were implemented without credit. She watched as newer employees with less experience were given opportunities she had earned. Elena had convinced herself that she was lucky to have a job. She told herself that maybe she wasn't ready for advancement. She accepted explanations that never quite made sense and promises that were never fulfilled. She had become so used to being overlooked that she started to believe she was worth being overlooked. But something shifted the day Elena's younger brother graduated from college and immediately received a job offer with a starting salary higher than what she was making after 7 years. That moment forced her to confront a painful truth. She had been teaching people that her time, her talent, and her dedication were worth less than they actually were. The mirror principle is always at work in your life. The way you see yourself is reflected back to you through the way others treat you. If you see yourself as valuable, others will see your value. If you see yourself as worthy of respect, others will respect you. But if you see yourself as someone who should be grateful for scraps, your internal compass knows your worth, even when your mind tries to convince you otherwise. That feeling you get in your stomach when someone treats you poorly, that's your internal value system telling you that what's happening doesn't align with who you are. That discomfort you feel when you're being taken advantage of, that's your spirit recognizing the disconnect between your worth and your treatment. The problem is, most people have learned to ignore that compass. They've been taught to dismiss that feeling, to push down that discomfort, to silence that inner voice that says, this isn't right. But that compass is your most reliable guide to knowing when it's time to walk away. Now, what happens when you ignore that compass? What's the real cost of staying in situations that don't honor your worth? Let me tell you about a frog that teaches us one of the most important lessons about human behavior. If you take a frog and throw it into a pot of boiling water, that frog will immediately jump out. Its survival instincts kick in instantly because the danger is obvious and immediate. But if you take that same frog and put it in a pot of cool, comfortable water, then slowly turn up the heat, degree by degree, something fascinating and tragic happens. The frog doesn't jump out. Instead, it adjusts to each small increase in temperature until eventually it's cooked alive. This is exactly what happens to people who stay too long in situations that slowly diminish them. The disrespect doesn't start at boiling point. It starts cool and comfortable, then increases so gradually that you adjust to each new level of unacceptable treatment until you find yourself tolerating things you never thought you would. Think about it. No one wakes up one morning and decides to accept a relationship where they're constantly criticized and belittled. No one starts a job planning to work for a boss who takes credit for their ideas and passes blame for failures. No one enters a friendship expecting to be the one who always gives while never receiving. But gradually, slowly, the temperature increases. A small comment that makes you uncomfortable becomes normal. A pattern of being overlooked becomes expected. A behavior that once shocked you becomes something you make excuses for. And before you know it, you're that frog in boiling water, wondering how you got there. The most dangerous part about staying too long is that your tolerance for disrespect grows stronger while your sense of self-worth grows weaker. Each day you accept less than you deserve. You're training yourself to believe that less is all you're worth. Each time you swallow your truth to keep peace, you're teaching yourself that your voice doesn't matter. There was a man named Carlos who owned a small restaurant. For 3 years, he had a business partner who consistently showed up late, made decisions without consultation, and took money from the register without permission. Carlos kept thinking things would improve. He kept believing that if he just worked harder, sacrificed more, gave more patience, his partner would change. Meanwhile, Carlos was working 16-hour days while his partner worked 4. Carlos was solving problems while his partner was creating them. Carlos was building the business while his partner was bleeding it dry. But Carlos had become so accustomed to compensating for his partner's failures that he couldn't see how much energy he was losing in the process. The cost wasn't just financial. Carlos stopped spending time with his family. He stopped pursuing other opportunities. He stopped investing in his own growth because all his energy was going toward propping up a situation that was designed to fail. He was so busy trying to make something work that wasn't working. He couldn't see all the things that could work if he just freed himself to pursue them. This is what staying too long does to you. It doesn't just drain your energy, it blinds you to possibilities. It doesn't just waste your time, it costs you opportunities. It doesn't just diminish your today, it mortgages your tomorrow. Every day Carlos spent trying to fix what was broken was a day he couldn't spend building something beautiful. Every hour he invested in managing his partner's dysfunction was an hour he couldn't invest in his own vision. Every moment he used to compensate for someone else's inadequacy was a moment stolen from his own potential. When you stay too long in the wrong situation, you don't just suffer in that situation, you suffer in every area of your life because dysfunction is contagious. Accepting disrespect in one area teaches you to accept it in others. Tolerating being undervalued in one relationship trains you to expect it in all relationships. The compound effect of staying where you don't belong doesn't just add up, it multiplies. Each day of accepting less compounds into a lifestyle of settling. Each moment of tolerating mistreatment builds into a pattern of low expectations. So how do you know when it's time to walk away? How do you distinguish between a temporary challenge that requires perseverance and a toxic situation that demands departure? The answer lies in understanding the difference between seasons and situations, between temporary storms and permanent patterns. There are signs that tell you when something has run its course. When the energy you're putting into a situation consistently exceeds the value you're receiving from it, that's a sign. When you find yourself constantly making excuses for someone else's behavior, that's a sign. When you're working harder to maintain a relationship than the other person, that's a sign. When your peace is being sacrificed daily for someone else's comfort, that's a sign. But recognizing the signs is only half the battle. The other half is having the wisdom and courage to act on what you see. This is where most people get stuck. Not in seeing the truth, but in accepting it and doing something about it. There was once a wise farmer who understood the seasons better than anyone in his village. While other farmers would try to extend their harvest beyond its natural time, holding on to crops that were past their prime, this farmer knew exactly when to reap what he had sown. He understood that trying to harvest too early would mean getting fruit that wasn't ready. But waiting too long would mean getting fruit that was spoiled. One season. The other farmers criticized him for harvesting his wheat while it still looked like it could grow more. They said he was giving up too soon, that he wasn't maximizing his potential yield. But this farmer knew something they didn't. He could see that the wheat had reached its peak. He could see that staying longer wouldn't produce more grain. It would just risk losing what had already been produced that year. While the other farmers lost significant portions of their harvest to an unexpected storm that came just days later, this farmer's wheat was safe in his barn. His willingness to walk away at the right time, even when others didn't understand it, saved everything he had worked for. This is the art of strategic departure. Knowing when something has given you all it's going to give. Knowing when staying longer won't improve the situation. It will only expose you to unnecessary risk. Knowing when holding on becomes more dangerous than letting go. Walking away strategically is not about anger or revenge. It's not about proving a point or getting the last word. It's about wisdom. It's about recognizing that some chapters are meant to end so that better chapters can begin. It's about understanding that staying in expired situations prevents you from entering into your seasonal opportunities when you decide to walk away. Do it with class. Don't burn bridges just because you're not crossing them anymore. Don't destroy what you're leaving just because it wasn't right for you. Remember, the goal is not to hurt others. The goal is to honor yourself. The woman named Eleanor I told you about earlier, she eventually did walk away from that job, but she didn't do it in anger. She didn't do it to spite her employers. She did it because she finally recognized that her season there was over. She prepared herself by updating her skills, building her network, and saving money. She didn't just leave, she left prepared. When Elena finally submitted her resignation letter, she did it professionally and graciously. She trained her replacement thoroughly and left all her projects in good order. She walked away with her reputation intact and her bridges unburned. And because she left the right way, doors opened for her that would have remained closed if she had left in bitterness. Strategic departure requires emotional intelligence. It requires the ability to separate your feelings from your decisions. It requires the maturity to leave situations that hurt you without trying to hurt them back. It requires the wisdom to understand that your departure is not about punishment. It's about positioning yourself for your next level. The key is preparation. Don't wait until you're so frustrated that you make emotional decisions. Don't wait until you're so depleted that you have nothing left to give to your next opportunity. Start preparing for your departure while you still have the energy and clarity to do it well. Now, here's what nobody tells you about walking away. The space you create when you leave something that wasn't serving you becomes the most fertile ground for what's supposed to come next. That empty space isn't a void to be feared. It's a canvas waiting for your masterpiece. That silence isn't loneliness. It's peace preparing you for purpose. When you respect yourself enough to walk away, you don't just end something, you begin everything. You don't just close a door, you open a hallway full of possibilities. You don't just say no to what was wrong, you say yes to what could be right. But here's where most people stumble after they've had the courage to walk away. They get scared of the empty space. They start to panic about what they've left behind. They begin to romanticize the very situation they just escaped. They start to think, maybe it wasn't that bad. Maybe they made a mistake. Maybe they should go back. This is the test that determines whether your departure was strategic or just emotional. This is the moment that reveals whether you truly understood your worth or just reacted to your pain. This is when you discover if you walked away from something or toward something. Let me tell you about a woman named Isabella who owned a small bakery in her neighborhood. For 15 years, she had rented the same space from a landlord who consistently raised her rent without improving the building, who ignored her requests for basic repairs, and who treated her like she was lucky to be there instead of recognizing that her business was what made his property valuable. Isabella had built a loyal customer base who loved not just her pastries, but the warm, welcoming atmosphere she had created. But every month, she found herself struggling to pay rent that kept increasing while her space kept deteriorating. She spent her profits on repairs that should have been the landlord's responsibility. She spent her energy fighting for basic respect that should have been automatically given years. Isabella told herself she had no choice. She had invested so much in this location. Her customers knew where to find her. Starting over somewhere else seemed impossible, risky, maybe even irresponsible. She convinced herself that tolerating the mistreatment was just part of business, that all landlords were probably the same anyway. But one morning, as Isabella arrived to find that her ceiling had leaked all night and destroyed thousands of dollars worth of inventory, a leak she had reported months earlier that was never fixed, she realized something profound. She was not just running a business in that space. She was shrinking her dreams to fit someone else's limitation that day. Isabella made the decision to walk away, not in anger, not in haste, but with the clarity that comes from finally understanding your worth. She gave proper notice, found temporary space to serve her customers, and began looking for a new location. The months that followed tested every ounce of faith Isabella had in herself. There were days when she wondered if she had made the right choice. There were moments when the uncertainty felt overwhelming. There were times when going back seemed easier than moving forward. But Isabella had learned something powerful about herself during those years of tolerating poor treatment. She was stronger than she had ever imagined. If she could build a successful business while dealing with constant obstacles and disrespect, what could she accomplish in an environment that supported her vision? 6 months later, Isabella found a space that was not just better than her old location, it was perfect for what she wanted to create. The rent was reasonable, the landlord was professional and responsive, and the location had even better foot traffic than her previous spot. But here's the beautiful part of the story. Because Isabella had learned to value herself, she attracted people who valued her too. Her new landlord didn't just see her as a tenant, he saw her as a partner in creating a thriving commercial district. Her customers didn't just follow her to the new location, they brought friends who had heard about the amazing bakery that was worth traveling for. Within a year of walking away from that toxic landlord relationship, Isabella's revenue had doubled. Not because she was working harder, but because she was working in an environment that honored her contribution. Not because her product had changed, but because her circumstances finally matched her value. The empty space that Isabella feared when she first walked away had become the fertile ground for growth she never could have experienced in her old situation. The uncertainty she dreaded had become the adventure that revealed capabilities she never knew she had. The risk she was afraid to take had become the foundation for security she never could have achieved by playing it safe. This is what happens when you respect yourself enough to walk away and then have the courage to rebuild. You discover that what you thought was your ceiling was actually just a low-hanging obstacle. You realize that what you thought was your limit was just the boundary of your old environment, not the boundary of your potential. When you walk away from situations that diminish you, you create magnetic space for situations that elevate you. When you refuse to accept disrespect, you become a magnet for respect. When you demonstrate that you value yourself, you attract people who value you too. The life you build after walking away from what doesn't serve you becomes a testament to what's possible when you honor your worth. It becomes proof that respecting yourself enough to leave the wrong things positions you to receive the right things. It becomes evidence that your value was never determined by how others treated you. It was always determined by how you chose to treat yourself. Your future is not behind you in the situations you had the courage to leave. Your future is in front of you, in the spaces you create when you respect yourself enough to walk away.